This current season of Jersey, I've only watched the premiere. And I've
Really?
checked day gag around the world. I
You're bored. A lot of people are bored.
I am not, I'm gonna say it. I'm just not, I'm not here for the recycled drama. I'm not here for Jennifer Aiden versus Margaret Joseph. It was great at one point in time. It was delicious. I'm over it. I am so over Melissa versus Teresa. It's been 12 years. I'm bored. I'm exhausted. In the words of Leanne Lockett, my panty line is exhausted. My weave is exhausted. I haven't watched the show since the premiere. I will watch Teresa's wedding special because that's when the real drama happens. But I want to talk to you about it because are you watching this season?
I'm watching it only because Kim D and I do the weekly Patreon Saturdays. So that like, and by the way, we gave you a huge shout out because I have been
Yeah.
saying now I might have to backtrack on my statement about Melissa going, which we'll get into, but I have said from like the second episode, just like I said about Lisa Rinna being fired and no one listened. I've been saying to Kim D every Saturday, Melissa's gonna be fired. She's like, oh, slow down, girl. That's not. And then Carlos King on his own podcast says Melissa is going to be fired. And then the next weekend on Patreon, Kim's like, Carlos King said Melissa's going to be fired. She's going to be fired. I'm like, wait, let me drop the coffee. I have been sitting here. It's like, you know how like when you have family and like the family's the one that's really there for you when you're sick and they bring you chicken soup, but then like the cool aunt or uncle, or in this case, you know, as you say, the gay black uncle from, you know, a different state comes and visits. And I'm like, I have been saying Melissa's not coming back for 12 weeks now. And Carlos King says this in one sentence. And now all of a sudden, this is what you want to talk about, Melissa not coming back. So we gave you a huge shout out. Kim apparently now believes it. But I'm like, I've been telling, who have you been talking to on the Patreon every Saturday? I've been saying this. Oh, Carlos says it. Okay, so now you are listening. So apparently Kim D believes it's true now that you
Well,
said.
thank you for that. And Kim, first of all, every Saturday, there's nothing that gets me going as I literally am in my car. True tea, and I want you to finish. Every Saturday, I hop in my car to hit the gym. I only listen to you and Kim D. It's the best Saturday pick me up that I need versus a pre-workout drink. It's so funny. You two together are the Kelly and Ryan that we had. I love it so much. And thank you, Kim D. I will always be your girl. I'm a fan. I love you. Thank you. Go ahead.
I'm like, man, but thank you for listening to our Saturdays. No, I mean, look, I think a lot of people are, so I am watching because I have to. I agree with you. It's not even just Melissa and Teresa. Like, it's like Margaret versus Jennifer Aiden. Who cares? Like, Jackie Goldschneider, why are you even still there? Like, the whole thing is like, so I've been saying since now, I've heard something recently, which I don't know if it's true, but I've been saying,
Ooh.
well, so look, so I agreed. Like you and I, we think like producers, right? So we say like that was the thing with Rinna. I'm like, it's not whether you like her or not. I'm like, the show has to change. She's so overpowering. I feel that with Jersey, that like this is it. We've had the same cast for how many years? But I heard recently, now this just like with Rinna, in the final hour, I started to panic and backtrack. I heard from someone, not a reliable source, but semi, that everyone might be coming back.
No! No! No!
I still don't see how. I don't see when like Melissa's on Watch What Happens and Andy says like I don't see a resolution. They just filmed the reunion, and I mean I have it from a very reliable source, and you could read between the lines. It's someone that was physically sitting there. That like the whole thing is pretty much Melissa versus Teresa, and it was everything Andy's saying is true. It was so ugly. Where do we go from here? I'm going to stand by. I think Melissa will be going,
I
but
will stand by that along with you.
then I had another thought. What if Melissa doesn't go? Well, here's the thing. I think whether Melissa goes or stays, I think next season is the takedown of Margaret. I think 100%. If Melissa goes, then next season we'll have some new people. But I think next season is like put the nail in Margaret's coffin. And I think it's her last season. Or Melissa stays. And I think Melissa then, which Margaret wouldn't do to her, Margaret did to her behind her back. She turned on her. Well, Margaret's like, is the one, I mean, this whole rumor about Melissa kissing someone is technically because Melissa's PR person saw this and then told Margaret, and Margaret told her best friend, Laura. I'm not even knocking Margaret because that's her best friend of 40 years. That's how this is out there. But when Margaret's ex-friend says that Margaret, she does say these things behind all her friends' back. She does. Like, I'm not trying to.
So wait, I want to update my audience. So on David's podcast, Behind Velvet Rope, okay, he had Margaret Joseph's ex-best friend, Laura. Now, Raindrops, remember, when Margaret was on my podcast, she mentioned this ex-best friend who, in her words, she was desperately trying to get on the show by any means necessary. Allegedly, Margaret introduced her. They put her on tape and pretty much said, we don't want you. And according to Margaret, that was the reason why Laura started to make up these lies. But David had Laura on his podcast recently. It shocked the airwaves and broke the internet. What did Laura say to you about Margaret, allegedly, being a shit talker to her castmates behind the scenes?
And mind you, like, I know, because I mean, I used to hang out with Margaret, but Laura was there. I used to hang out with Laura too. So it's not like so I have seen this dynamic, and I'm not like listen, I just go with my gut. I really do. Like, I really have no horse in the race. Look, has Laura tried out to be on the Housewives? Sure, she really has. She'll admit that. Has she tried out more than once? Yes. Do I really think that she is so angry that she's just making all this up because she didn't get on Housewives? No, I don't. Would she be on the show? Sure. I mean, most people would. You get a check. It could. So she admits that, but I don't. I mean, I understand how you could spin it that you didn't get on the show, but listen, I mean, so I've been around Margaret and Laura at the same exact time. I mean, I do have a Margaret story that I could tell you of my own, which I've told on my own podcast. Well, I mean, here's
you want to tell me in the raindrops, David?
Sure, I'll tell you in the raindrops. I mean, here's the thing. And like, it's not like I'm trying to get any, there's nothing, I'm just telling the honest truth. Like, look, I think all these things that are out there about Margaret, like, has something on this one and that one. I believe it's true. I do. I mean, like, Laura did say things like, she said Melissa's envy stuff is shit. And she said, this is what Laura said. I'm not saying it, that, she would call producers and say, Jackie's really, emotionally weak. She can't handle this. She can't handle being here. That's what Laura says. She said it on my podcast. So
well, let me ask you this.
Could I see
David,
this being true?
Well, let me ask you this. You and Margaret at one point in time were friends. When you and Margaret were close friends and were hanging out, would Margaret talk shit about the cast members on the show who we think she's friends with?
She said certain things, yeah. She said certain things. I never heard
about Melissa and Jackie.
Because if I was gonna remember, and I said this on my own podcast, the one thing that sticks out to me that she always said was, because it's favored nations. Right. I mean, Teresa and Melissa have a different salary. We all know that. They've gone off the Favored Nations tour. But the rest, she would always say, like, can you believe that Dolores makes more money than me? I bring so much more to the show than her. She would always say that. Well, I mean, I mean, I see your point. I get it. But I mean, is that a nice thing to be telling me when Dolores is your friend? I mean, like, I'm trying to think of I feel like there's more things she said about Melissa that I would always like hear, but it's hard to really, I can't really think. But listen, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, that's why I really believe Laura in all of this, Because, like, look, you're talking to me like this. I wasn't even your friend in 40 years. So I believe all of this. And I mean, look, this is not going to help Laura get on the show. You know, as a producer, that's not how it works.
Right. No, it's not how it works. I think, look, I'm always saddened when best friends over 2 decades have a falling out over a TV show.
Yes.
I always feel bad about that because I'm like, were you guys friends in the first place? Like, how can a TV show come in between, excuse me, of a real friendship? So Margaret and Laura's friendship
40
being
years.
this way, how long?
40.
That's in 40 years, and a TV show came in between you two is disgusting to me. It's beyond sad, and that what makes me mad. However, it still makes me nosy. So what was Laura saying to you about Margaret? Because I even said this to Teresa, and this is how close me and Teresa are. I always said to Teresa, at the end of the day, Margaret, to me, Teresa, is good TV. I think she's great television, and I think she's great for the show. And Teresa doesn't take my opinion and say, well, fuck you. No, she's like, okay, that's her opinion. Let's move on. I do think Margaret's good for the show, but I also agree with you and the world in terms of we just have to see something different, and it can't be a one-trick pony. So Laura is alleging that Margaret talked shit about her cast members, but she also is saying that Margaret is the one that told her about the rumor of Melissa allegedly being caught kissing another guy in a car.
Well, here's the other thing. Now, do I know this? Well, yeah. So, I mean, here's the other thing. I know the guy. I mean, okay, I'm not friends with him, but I've met that. That's why I can say these things so certain that I know these people. Like, I've met them. So I don't know this guy, Nick. Like, we're not best friends. I've met him maybe 5 or 6 times.
But you know how you know his face.
I know his. I mean, he's also really hot, but that's besides the point. But like, I know the PR person. So like, I've seen them. I've seen them all interact. Like, I know that when they go out, they're at like Fresco by Scotto, which he does PR for. Like, you know, like I know that they go out at night together. So when someone says that like Margaret was with Melissa and their shared PR person, and by the way, the PR person is best friends with the guy that Melissa allegedly kissed, like best friends. So they are all out in New York City, whether this happened or not. They're all together. So how is it that Laura is making up all these names when they're actually truly all out together? They're all out all the time together. So it's like, the fact that like this PR person that worked for Melissa and Margaret opened a car door, saw this, closed the car door. Then the next day is working with his other client, Margaret, and says, girl, let me tell you what happened last night. And Margaret's like, really? Now think about it. Why you're telling client B, that's to me that's where this starts. It starts with this PR person, but Then Margaret has this, and she tells her that Kim and I always say, if someone told Kim D, like, let me tell you gossip about Carlos or something, she would say, David, we're very good friends. You're not going to spread this to the world. So the fact that Margaret didn't do anything wrong to me. She told her best friend of 40 years. Now, of course, they've had a falling out, and this is out there. So when I started saying on my show, I did not see this with my own eyes, but I know this happened. I'm going with, I know it. I just know it. That is my opinion, because I know all these people and I know how often they used to go out together. I know this happened. That was when Margaret was like, shh, you shouldn't be saying this. I'm like, but this has nothing to do with you. I'm not even saying you did anything wrong. I just know. And so then she would like, there was one phone call we had where I'm like, you can't tape record someone in New York without them knowing it. Like, girl, this is a phone. This is not a DM. It's not a text. It's not an email. I can't be recorded. This is you and me. We're having a conversation. And
disclaimer from my audience, David is a lawyer, by the way. Continue.
Right. So I'm like, now you are sitting here on this call and you are now lying to me and trying to convince me that this didn't happen. I would see, the thing is, like, you and I say this all the time. If Margaret called me and said, blah, 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 and we're friends, do not repeat this on this show, then I never would have said it. You know what I mean? Like, imagine if Teresa called and said, Carlos, listen, blah, 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 and nobody knows this. Don't ever put this on you wouldn't talk about it on the podcast. You and me talk when we know something from a reliable source, but like, it's not from the direct source. So if Margaret said to me, oh my God, it's fucking, and just don't talk, I was like, okay, then I wouldn't have. But now it's not like I'm mad. I'm not angry. I have nothing against Margaret, but you're now trying to convince me that you're like lying now to me. And girl, we both know this happens. Like, and I know. So it's like, now you're lying to me, but this is not in a DM or a text we're just talking one-on-one, and you're like lying to me now. So.
And did you and Margaret have a falling out of a friendship because of this?
Well, I feel that we've had a lot of things in the past happen, a lot. But this certainly, once I started on my weekly show, because what are you going to do? You're not going to lie to your raindrops when you know something is true. So I was just like, I have nothing against Margaret. I'm just telling everybody, when this topic came up with Kim D, I was like, yeah, no, this here's why I believe this happened. When I started with this narrative, Margaret took it as a strike against her because, she's team Melissa and Jackie against Trey. I'm like, girl, I'm not on the show. Like, this has nothing to do with you. And I'm not even criticizing you for telling your best friend of 40 years. I'm just telling my audience where I feel like I owe them the truth that I know this happened. I just know it. So it started, but can I just tell you, it goes way back. Do you want to hear a story?
Yeah.
Here's a story. And I told this on my podcast too, like way back. This is like the beginning of the pandemic. Your good friend, Miss Danielle Staub. Remember when she was getting into the podcast? Oh, you're so excited. I have a Danielle Staub story. And I have and Laura.
Yeah.
So remember when Danielle Staub was getting into the podcast game for like a minute?
Yes.
She was going to appear at the Strand, which is like the stand, like the comedy. It's like some stand-up comedy place. I forgot the name. It's like stand-up on the Upper West Side, very small place. And she put something out on Instagram, like, I'm going to do a live show. But I mean, literally this theater seats about 20 people. So I said, in a comment, welcome to the game, girl, because I have a successful podcast. Listen, if I'm in New York, I'll be there to support you. Because I've always been close with Danielle. I've like, not like, you, but like we've had no. So Danielle responded, oh, boo, blah, 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 XOXO. Great. I go to bed. What a great night. I have a great night's sleep. I wake up. I'm having my morning coffee. And I have about 300 texts from Miss Margaret Josephs. You fucking asshole. I'm like, first of all, what are you doing on Danielle Staub's public Instagram page? Like, there wasn't 3 comments. There was hundreds of comments. It's Danielle Staub. I don't know how many. I'm like, and ask Laura. I'm like, wait a second. So I'm just giving you a background of our friendship. This was like in 2020. Carlos, you didn't realize I was going to spill all this tea. This is why
I love it so much.
This is why Carlos King is an excellent producer, guys, because he gets you. But there was like, I'm like, are you kidding me? It's a comment. Now, she made me, and she didn't make me. I will take action. No one makes me do anything. But she was like, basically like, you choose her or you choose me.
Shut up.
I see.
I'm
Carlos.
Speechless. David, I'm speechless because you are actually friends with Margaret. Danielle, you have a great rapport with, right? Like a supportive rapport, like, oh, you have a show? If I'm in town, I'll attend. Listen, I would watch, let me not lie. I was about to say I would watch Melissa live show, but I wouldn't. And that's no diss to Melissa. I like Melissa. Okay. So it's no diss to her. But
Melissa Gorga?
Yeah, I was gonna say if Teresa would never give me an ultimatum. I have Margaret on my podcast. Teresa wasn't like, why would she be in your like Teresa was like, oh, so-and-so said this. No, Teresa said, Margaret said this on your podcast and it wasn't true. And then Margaret and Teresa got into it on a live stage about my podcast interview with Margaret because Teresa said you hopped on Carla's podcast and told him lies. So, but she didn't give me an ultimatum like, take this down, or I'm floored because what's the issue? I get that Danielle pulled Margaret's ponytail. Time has passed. Like, what?
That's when I was like, and so at that time, and Laura was even involved. Laura was like, we can't, because at that point, Laura, this was her best friend. Laura was texting me, we're so shocked at you. We. And I'm like, oh my God. Margaret's like, I need you to call me immediately. So then, I then completely distanced myself from Danielle, which I really have a problem. Look, your enemy is not my enemy. Like I have no problem, as you say, I'm very vocal. If you do me wrong, don't get me wrong. Like I'm happy to tell you to go fuck yourself. But Danielle, listen, you and I both know this. Danielle Staub does not have she's her own worst enemy. She does not have like a hateful, vindictive heart. She does not. She really doesn't.
No, she doesn't. No,
she doesn't. So it was like that at the time. I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to not support Danielle because, no offense, I've actually known Danielle before I even knew you existed in the world. I've known Danielle, right? Like we were best friends, but like we know each other. Danielle knows who I am. Like we knew each other, and like she was always like she was, So I did it. No one forced me to do it, but at the time I was like, this doesn't feel right. I mean, I've since, apologized to Danielle, but it just didn't. And here's the thing. Back in the day, like my best friend, Kim D, when Teresa used to appear places, I would be like, oh, I'm going to see Teresa. Kim never would be like, why? Like, I'd be like, oh, there's Melissa. Kim would be like, have fun. Like, I hate this bitch, Melissa, but go have fun. So it's like,
that's Kim D.
And I don't hold people to higher standards than, I don't hold things against, you know what I mean? So I would never say to you, like, I would never give someone an ultimatum. So it's not like I'm on some high horse and I like hold everyone to a high standard, because I don't. So just like to give you a background of like how this all, and I have nothing against Margaret. Really, I wish her nothing but the best of luck.
Listen, if we're talking about Danielle's heart, you're not a mean-spirited person. And I know that because I've always listened to your show before you and I became introduced to each other. Now that I know you, you are you are literally everything you represent in your podcast. You are a straight shooter, you're funny, you're very smart, and you're here to do a job. And that's the reason why I have an issue when certain housewives are like, you're talking about me in your podcast. First of all, girl, be happy I'm mentioning your name. It's a compliment of your relevancy in the landscape of reality television. It's going to put money in your pocket if you played the game right. And that's exactly what you're doing. So it saddens me to hear that. But before we close off on this Melissa tea, honey.
And also, by the way, it's also very arrogant because, and then I didn't interrupt, but like, it's very arrogant. It's like, Robin would not be calling Candace, or I mean, they would, but it's like, it's almost like you wouldn't call Andy, you wouldn't call, Ryan Seacrest, you wouldn't call Kelly. It's like, so it's like, you really are saying that you're up here and, Carlos is down here and I'm down. It's really, if you really strip it away, because you say I'm so smart, and it's arrogant that like I'm supposed to be a lapdog and you're up here, because you wouldn't call another housewife and say this, you would, but like it is different, right? It's almost like don't do this. It's like, but I don't understand, like in life, who are you? Like, I don't know, just because you're on a TV show.
Yeah, and I will go on record saying, listen, this is somebody who raised Nene and Kim in the landscape of reality television.
Right.
Nene, Kim, Sheree, when they all went through their trifecta of bullshit, none of those women, even today, 15 years later, have ever given me an ultimatum of, if you want to be friends with me, don't talk to Kim or don't talk to Nene. I've never, Kenya with Portia I have never received an ultimatum. Teresa with Jacqueline, when they had a big falling out, it was never the case. So I agree with you there. going to this upcoming reunion in terms of it being aired, it was shot recently. There's tons of rumors that has transpired. Andy Cohen has said he lost his cool on Teresa. He said the Teresa versus Melissa is really bad, but it is new information. With this tea about what Melissa allegedly did that's going to air this season on the show, what have you heard about if that conversation is the reason why it got so big, or are you hearing other stuff was disclosed about Melissa and or Teresa?
I'm not hearing anything new. That's like, I think it's like a rehashing of all the, look, I think, well, I mean, except for, I guess it comes up, or I don't know if it comes up on the reunion, but this whole thing about, which Kim D has been saying now for about 3 years, like this whole thing that like Jacqueline, you know what it is? Sometimes when you hear so much information, you don't know, is this real world? Or I think what I heard is, I think this does come up at the reunion, where now that Jacqueline and Teresa have had lunch and they've kept in touch, that Jacqueline, I guess, told Teresa that, your brother, Joe, not even Melissa, your brother was friends with Juicy's ex-partner, and your brother was one of the ones that, called, this does come up at the reunion, involved the feds. And then the rumor is that Teresa, and I talked about this with Kim, Teresa turns to Dolores and says, please do me a favor. Tell Caroline Manzo I'm sorry.
Oh, shut!
But this is not, Carlos is like on the floor. But listen, this is not like, but it's a pretty reliable source. So let's see if this, but I mean, listen, if she said that, it's going to air. They're not going to edit that when they mention Manzo. That's what I heard. So maybe.
And the reason why it's such a jaw dropper is because, listen, raindrops, remember that for the longest time, Teresa has alleged that she believes Caroline was, in the words of the Jersey world, the rat, the one who ratted them out to the feds. Teresa has always said it was Caroline. Caroline has always vehemently denied it. I know Caroline personally. To this day, I never believed it. I still don't believe it. That's not who Caroline is. My opinion, whatever. Jacqueline and Teresa are back friends. I had Jacqueline on the podcast. She said they spoke for 4 hours about a lot of stuff. She did not reveal that to me. But if you're talking to somebody for 4 hours, you're talking more about the kids and their play dates. You're talking about some really pertinent information that needed to be unraveled during this Ponderosa.
Yes. So, I mean, maybe, so to me, it's like, because Kim has been saying this on my show. So to me, I was like, oh, is that new? But I guess to Teresa, maybe that is new, because she then apparently turned to somebody. I think it was Dolores, since I'm pretty sure it was, and said this to Caroline, and because Dolores is friends with Caroline. So we'll see if this comes out, but I think that's the new info. So look, I think Teresa is really done with them. Like, I don't see how Melissa comes back, but then I'm like, but here's the thing. I mean, so I think next season is the takedown of Margaret, regardless. This is what got me to thinking. Is it possible that Melissa comes back and the whole season is still the takedown of Margaret, and Melissa, who is so desperate to save her job, so desperate, because it's not 6 figures, it's 7 figures, that because Margaret is not turned on her friend Melissa in the public's eyes, and she did it all behind the scenes. Is it possible that Melissa then is just kind of sits back while Margaret's taken down and is like, girl, I know you helped me, but I'm not helping you. And then that, like, somewhere the executive producers are like, you know what? Melissa is vital to this show. And the way to change this show is not to get rid of her. It's to get rid of Margaret.
Woo! Okay. So look, as a producer,
are you going to employ me as your assistant producer if this is how it goes?
Much. No, this is good. I will say this, because as you were talking, my producer had one on. The only way it would make sense for Melissa to come back, to me, is if we're going with your theory, it would make sense if Melissa is a part of the Margaret takedown because it's something different we haven't seen. So
That's what
that
I'm
would be
saying.
interesting. But this is the thing that's going to be always weird. The show revolves around Teresa. The idea of Teresa and Melissa being in the same room, to me, doesn't work. Now, this is right.
That.
This is going to be the weird part. Melissa, to your point, makes a lot of money on this show, 7 figures. That's a lot of money. Envy isn't bringing in the green. It's not green with Envy yet, allegedly. So, but this is what I would have done, David. If I knew my job was on the line, because I would have to say, you know what, ego aside, I got to get back right with my sister-in-law, I would have used the reunion to make amends with Teresa and vow to work towards that in order to keep my job. Whisper in Teresa's ear, I'm sorry, let's take Margaret down. I would have done that in order to keep my job. So I'm surprised that Melissa wasn't smart enough to think, let me, like to your point, listen, I don't think any of these women are real friends. They're friends out of a convenience of being on the show. If Melissa got fired tomorrow, Margaret will never contact her, nor would Jackie or Dolores. We know that, and vice versa. It's sort of like when Tamara got fired, Shannon Bador said, bye, bitch. I have no use for you anymore. I don't need you anymore. So that's why I'm really surprised that Melissa played her cards wrong.
I agree. And like, so, Kim has been saying all along too, which I agree with. I adopted this theory that like, Luis is the wild card. So apparently also when all of this was said and done, he got up at the end and shook they come for him, but he shook everyone's hands, including Joe Gorga's, even though this was revealed that Joe helped get Juicy deported. Allegedly, we're going to see that like, if I were Melissa, I would have appealed to Louis, because the one person where I'm sitting that can tell Teresa what to do and she listens is Louis. So Melissa really her and Joe should have forgotten about everyone and focused on him. Because if he said, listen, you need to give your brother a chance, and she would have done it. You love your girl Teresa, but let's face it, she listens to Louis.
That's her husband. And because Louis has, the one thing I loved about Louis in last year's reunion was you saw that, look, did Margaret say X, Y, and Z? Whatever, right? Let's forgive and move on. And that's when I realized, like, okay, Louis has the sensibility to let Teresa know you can't always hold a grudge. It's not going to do you any justice to your heart, your spirit, or just life. Let's forgive and move on from it. So I do agree with you.
So, that's what I would have done if I were her. But I feel that, like, look, if Melissa is back, they're not going to let it be Teresa versus Melissa. They're just not. They have to. So, like, imagine if, like, Teresa just was like, oh, you're willing to take down Margaret with me? And then Jennifer, I don't know. I just think that is the only way. I still agree. I don't see how, I don't see how Melissa could come back, but I feel if she did, the big change has to be to take down Margaret. What else? We're not taking out the new girls. No. they're setting them
and
up.
And no one cares enough. It's not must see TV. And that's the thing about Jersey. Jersey is no longer must see TV to where I'm getting something fresh. Like Lisa Rinna versus Kathy Hilton was like, what? I need to watch this the day it comes on. I'm canceling my dinner reservations. Jersey needs to get that. So I agree there. Now, before I let you go, Mr. David is a man around town. He's way more popular than I am in the streets of Hollywood. And recently, David and our good friend, Sarah Fraser, attended a foundation that Dorit. Does she oversee this foundation, David?
She donates her time. Like it's her. Sharon Stone is a part of this charity, and William H. Macy. Sharon Stone, which I learned, William H. Macy was there. So was Sharon Stone. She ran away after being there. Sharon Stone was the first celebrity attached to this charity. She's like old school homeless, not toothless.
Yes, you heard that right. Homeless,
Sorry.
not toothless. Let's say it one more time. Homeless,
Homeless and
not
not toothless.
toothless. So we saw the pictures. The entire cast was there. The new girl, Annalise, was there as well. How was it? Were the housewives receptive to you? Because, you know, you're kind of a bad boy in the podcast.
Well, I have to say, like, I'm happy to, like, I just don't understand. That's why I don't feel bad about saying certain things, because it's like, why is it that you hate this one? And then the next season, you're friends. It's like, that's where I think it's arrogant. It's like, yeah, I said this and I meant it at the time, but that was like 2 years ago. I'm way over that. Like, move on. I'm over it. So why are you holding it against me when you don't hold it against Lisa Rinna or whoever? But I have to say, when you do attend an event like this, which I have mixed feelings about, you do go in, you have angst. You have angst as you prepare to attend. You're like, I just don't really want. And then I'm like, but it's a charity. So listen, PK is not my biggest fan. Dorit was lovely. I was lovely towards her. So I'm like, okay, one out of the way. Everybody was, and I'm also like, I'm happy if no one realizes it's me. I'm happy to just be anonymous. Erica, too, I was like, she was fine. She warmed up after a minute. I said, I'm going to be in Vegas. I'm going to support Bet On. But
I'm going to be there too. So let's we'll talk. Okay.
Because, like, I mean, you can't miss that. You cannot miss that.
No, I'm not going to. I contacted Megan McCain and said, bitch, are we going? She said, fuck yeah. So we'll all go. Okay.
Literally, I'll go because I'm going to go more than once. So Erica was like, listen, I said things about Erica in the beginning. I've said great things about Erica recently, though. I actually have some good things to say about Erica. I do.
I love Erica.
Yeah. Just in the beginning, but listen, we had a moment later on in the night where it was like a real, I mean, Erica knows the podcast, and we had like a real talk of like, listen, I did what I had to. Like, you have to, when the world is closing in, you have to like preserve yourself. And I actually fully understand that. Like, I would do the same thing, right? There's all these people, you know who you are at the core. So like, I had like a real moment with Erica where I was like, I mean, I like, this is great. Anne Marie was lovely. I think she's going to fit right in.
Good to hear.
There's some controversial stuff out there about her and her husband. But, Sutton, I know the most probably out of all these people as far as
How is Sutton?
Listen, Sutton, you know what I love about Sutton? To me, she's very authentic. She is like, I really don't think Sutton has like, we talk about Margaret and her strategies. I don't think Sutton really look, Kyle Richards knows how to play the game. And I'm not even saying that's a bad thing, but Sutton is authentic, right? Love her or hate her. Same thing. That's why we love Teresa, even though, I have issues. Like, Teresa isn't playing a game. She's like, just like, wait, like, this is what the real story is. Sutton's that way. So listen, it was great to see the cast. I mean, look, I don't know what the drama is going to be this season. You talk about like, look, I still think Beverly Hills, to me, just because of the lifestyle, and it's so interesting still. Like, it is kind of like somehow it's become the gold standard. I don't know.
It's the number one Real Housewives of Beverly Hills is the highest rated Housewives, and it has been for the past 3 years.
I say that all the time, and everyone comes for me. It's Atlanta. I'm like, it was.
Atlanta is like number 3 now, right? Listen, as of today, it could be number 1 once this season airs. I'm saying for the past 3 years, the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills is the number 1 housewife show. It's a fact.
You know what it is? It's like, I always use this example, but I don't want to see Emily Simpson get in her minivan and drive the damn kids to school. And I don't want to see Gina Kirschenheiter in like a, 2-bedroom for 12. I don't want to see like normal people's lives. I don't. That is what it is about Beverly Hills to me. That is just It's just they don't have to do anything. I like the opulence. What? So I guess is this why I make enemies? Is this why I make enemies?
No, listen, this is the funny thing about it. Everybody agrees with you. That's the if you go on any message board, Twitter, whatever, everyone says the same thing. Listen, the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, I'm gonna say it. It's a great show because of the opulence and everything else. But also, one thing they do that they get right is once they clock in and there's something to talk about that is controversial, they have no problems going there. And they have no problems calling each other out. And they have no problems making it very obvious, this is my alliance, and I'm not going to go against them. And that's why it's interesting because it's rooted in reality. Like, I do believe that off season, some of those ladies do hang out. I really do believe that. And it's when you have that level of entertainment, when you splash the fucking zip code of opulence and richness, and think about it, homeless, not toothless, is not something you're going to see in Potomac. It's not something you're going to see in Atlanta. It's not something you're going to see in the OC. That it is very true to that zip code. Kathy Hilton in Aspen is rooted in her being the grande dame of that zip code. The freak out, the I'm mad that you're promoting Kendall Jenner's tequila. It's something that us common folks don't see every day. So when you see it, you're marveling at the access and the pettiness of these rich women having an argument. Last but not least, the most perfect.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, there was you'll finish it, but like just to talk about opulence, like, I was there like, oh, we're gonna have an auction. So I had I said to Sarah, listen, if there's like, it's a charity, if there's like a lunch with Kyle and Mauricio, I'll bid 1,000, maybe like 50. Let's see who it is. Oh, no, honey. This auction starts. They start with like the first thing, like these are the soccer jerseys worn by like Pele and like Cristiano Ronaldo. We're going to start the bidding at like 27,000, 20. And so like, right. So then I'm like, Sarah, I'm not bidding on it. Sarah was already like, honey, I'm not bidding on anything here. But I thought, maybe like 1,000, okay, like a lunch with Erica and like, Rinna or whoever, not Rinna, Kyle, like whatever. But Mr. Mauricio, but Miss Sutton, Erica sits there with her arms folded. Miss Sutton Strack. I mean, there was like 8 items. Miss Sutton Strack, she won what she was in that 27,000, 30,000, like same thing with, Miss Sutton. And Erica was like clapping for her, like, okay, girl. Like Erica was probably like, bring me on that vacation you just won, girl. But Miss Sutton Strack, she won one thing. I think it was like a Greece vacation, but she, honey, until she won one thing, she was bidding. Sutton was there to play. She was there to play. So there you talk about opulence. See, it's like, and Sarah, and by the way, Sarah thought she was having a night out. Sarah's like wanted a drink. I'm like, honey, this is not a social night out. Please don't speak to me. I need to watch what Erica's doing. I need to watch Sutton. Then during the auction, she's like, oh, this like chicken is so good. I'm like, move out of my way. I have to see who's bidding. So, but isn't that interesting? Miss Sutton was there. She was not fooling around.
No, okay, no. So listen, did you see any other housewives bet on anything besides Sutton?
Kyle on some things, but Mauricio won something too. And what I did enjoy seeing is when Kyle was bidding on something, they were sitting next to each other. Mauricio wasn't like, what are you doing? Put the paddle down, and vice versa. So they both sat there. We all know the agency has lots of offices. It is doing so Mauricio won something too. Both things, Sutton and Mauricio, whatever they won, I think was like 25 to like 35 grand each of them. But I forgot. Mauricio, I think, won some golf thing. But when Kyle was bidding, he wasn't like, what are you doing? And vice versa. So Kyle bowed out, but Mauricio won something. No, other than Kyle briefly, but it was really Mauricio and Sutton that were not against each other, but those were the two that came to play. Everyone else just was enjoying their evening.
Well, I
And by the
enjoyed
way,
this
this
one,
evening
baby.
was emceed by I'm there, and they're like, and Sarah's like, we have this MC. Who is it? She didn't even. I'm like, Paula Abdul. You don't. I'm like, okay, wait a second. I'm like, I don't give a fuck about any of these housewives. I am here for Miss Paula. And then wait, they're like, tonight we have a very special performance. Okay, well, like, what is like Sutton gonna? They're like, our performance tonight is Taylor Dane. I'm like, wait a second, but
What?
Taylor Dane performed later in the evening.
80s baby's dream.
Right. And Paula Abdul was the fucking MC. Yes. I was like, Sarah, I was like, I don't know what to say to you. I'm like, I don't care about the housewives anymore. Miss Paula is here.
That is so. Now we all see why the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills is number one, because it's listen, we watch reality TV to see things that we don't see in our ordinary lives. You want to see the extraordinary, the extraordinary lives of these people. And what you just described, wow.
Yeah, this was just, another night out for these ladies. Like the next night I saw on Sutton's Instagram, she was at some fashion thing with like, I forgot who the designer. It's like just every night. This is just like, where are we going to go tonight?
I love it. I love it. David, I can talk to you all day long. I love when you and I are together. It's nothing but magic. I gotta invite you back on. Oh, so
Seriously.
Raindrops. I'm gonna put him on the spot. David, when the because it's gonna be 3 parts. When the 3-part reunion of Jersey airs, I want you to come back on so you and I can talk about that in addition to discussing the fate of Melissa Gorga, because I think the reunion is going to let us know whether or not you and I are both right in our spidey senses that this may be Melissa's last season.
I agree. I will definitely come back, and you're recording mine coming up, and you're going to have to come on mine like throughout the season. If you stay with Atlanta and watch it, I may not either, but I would love, I have high hopes for Atlanta too, but I will definitely come back on yours. Because I agree. I think we have to see if this prediction is true that like she turns to, Dolores and says, that's what I heard, girl. That's what I heard.
That's going to be telling. All right. Let them know where they can find you, follow you, and support your amazing podcast that is, and correct me if I'm wrong, you think I have a lot of jobs? David's podcast is 7 days a week. New episodes, but go ahead, David.
It is every day. We have the weekends with Kim D, but it's Behind the Velvet Robe, Apple, Spotify. You can follow us on Instagram at Behind Velvet Robe. And just listen, we interview. I have Carolyn Manzo coming up on Monday. By the time this comes out, who knows when that will be, but we have some new tea from Miss Manzo. And it's not just Jersey. We have lots of housewives and lots of other Bravo stuff and real celebs too. We have some non-reality people as well. So
he has Sally Jesse Raphael and rest in heaven, Jerry Springer. He had Jerry Springer on too. I know how much you love him. Rest in heaven to Jerry Springer, but no, David really has a lot of celebrities outside of reality TV on his podcast.
And we've had Carlos King on many a time.
Well,
so
and you will continue to do so.
Oh my God. I told you I would have you every single week if you didn't have your own. Like, if you ever just want to forget about this podcast of yours and just do all your other jobs and just show up as a guest, Carlos, you have a once a week invite. We will make one of the 7 days just for you. You think I'm kidding?
I know you're serious. Okay. I know you're serious. No, I love you, David, and I will see you soon, my love, on your show.
Love you.